We're not at war with them, though, I don't think. The border did just change, though. Invade here. Siren. Oh, man, what a bad time for that. Okay. Hey, Blunt Machete 466. Thanks, man. All right, we're going to pause. We'll be back to this battle in a second. We have a Starship Siren here. So SpaceX, this is a little bit of a gear shift here. This is let's see. Starship SN20. We're going to switch over to science and technology real quick, and we're going to see what we got with a static fire. I'll be right back to Hearts of Iron in a second. Let's see what we got.
It's really important because the way we monitor all this to make sure...
I'll get back to Hearts of Iron in a moment. I want to see SpaceX fire the engines on their new spaceship.
Is because of that.
Bring your tanks. Yep. Okay, pause that for a second.
Big publishing house or anything like that.
So the siren is what people in chat were like on about. When the siren rings, that means we're about 10 minutes out from a test. I want to see them fire these rocket engines. Yeah, King, that's SpaceX's new hotness. They're basically trying to build a space shuttle and a Saturn V combined into one vehicle. I mean, this is called Starship. It is unbelievably cool. And this thing, see the smoke coming off of it? That means it's got a full tank of gas. It's not gas, it's liquid fuel, but you get the idea.
Yeah, it's a common.
And they're gonna fire these engines here in a second. Hopefully they fire these engines in a second. This stream is brought to you by our buddies over at NASA Spaceflight. NASA Spaceflight is a spaceflight journalism outfit that I'm pretty good friends with. They allow us to show the footage here on stream. Yeah, they're gonna do another static fire. Forgot how big it is, guys. That thing is about 50 meters tall. If you know other spacecraft, it's about as big as a space shuttle's external tank, the big orange tank. That the space shuttle used to fly with. It's about that big. It's freaking huge.
Awesome. Modern Dice Gaming.
All right, let's see what we got.
I mean, it's I'm floored right now. I have no idea what.
So once again, we will jump back into Hearts of Iron in a second. We'll finish up that Romanian battle here. How tall is the Saturn V again? 330 feet. Joseph. 30-story building. Saturn V's are huge, man. They were big rockets. Well, they still are. Some of them still exist, but we don't fly them. You get the idea. You know 2020.
Mostly me. Because I get like 10-minute answers, so I want to really make sure I don't talk through this.
And we've got a whole queue, a giant.
Okay, so the siren, guys, the siren was at 52 past the hour. So that means, burbs. The siren was at 52 past the hour, and the siren is usually indicative of 10 minutes. So at a little bit past the top of the hour, we should get a fire here. You can see a Saturn V at KSC or in Houston, and they are big. Yep. So we got here. Hang on. Let me see when everybody said the siren in chat. Let me scroll up. The first person I saw say it was Future Veterans. Hi, Future Veterans. At 52 past. So yeah, Sebby again. They're going again, man. Guys, SpaceX already fired. They already test fired the engines on this thing today. What they're trying to do. SpaceX is not only trying to build like a space shuttle Saturn V thing going on here, they're trying to make it reusable. So the space shuttle in the past was refurbishable. It was partially reusable, right? You didn't get the external tank back. The shuttle did come back. It got your engines back, which is really good. And then you had to take stuff apart and put it back together to get it to fly again, which is fine. That wasn't bad for a first attempt at a reusable vehicle. It was pretty damn good for a first attempt. Starship Starship is trying to get to airplane levels of reusability, and that is what makes this difficult. That's what makes this tough. Rockets are a little more temperamental than an airplane is. I mean, what you're asking a rocket, a reusable rocket, to go and do involves a little more energy than what an airplane gives off. Yeah. And also, we get it, Starship. You vape. I don't know, Laserman. Yeah, the space shuttle is good. It's pretty good. It was just too much to maintain. Yeah, they're trying to get around it, King. Yeah, the shuttle wasn't too bad. It wasn't a bad design. I still contend to say that if they flew the shuttle more, they probably would have gotten some of those problems figured out if they flew the stupid thing more. But the problem with flying the stupid thing more is that you're putting more people at risk. And yeah, they tried that in the 80s. It didn't really work too well. So with that being said, Starship will be tested a bunch in an unmanned capacity. So, you don't have to worry about that whole killing people thing. All right, guys, we should be inside of 5 minutes here for a test.
Chat says decaf coffee, Jack. Hey, I actually have had no coffee today. I'm just riled up. This is a exciting day of testing in Starbase. I don't know if you can tell if I'm excited.
King, I don't know about you. I'm a huge Space Shuttle fanboy. I thought the Space Shuttle was amazing for what it was.
Ian,
Like,
do you have any
don't get me
predictions
wrong.
on
If
how
I had to
many
choose
tiles might
between a
fall off
Saturn
on this one?
V and a Space Shuttle, I'd probably choose the
I'm
Saturn
gonna say
V.
0. I'm gonna be bold and say 0.
I'd probably choose the Saturn V, but the fact that the Space Shuttle exists is insane. Let alone flying for 30 years, 135 missions, 133 of them completely, totally successful is miraculous. That is amazing. What an amazing piece of equipment. But the Saturn V did get us to another celestial body, so that's what makes it win out. That's what makes it win out. Unmanned, the Space Shuttle would still be flying today. In snow, that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we have Shuttle 2.0 that's way better. Yeah. Yeah. Shuttle was beast mode, but SpaceX is looking to bridge that gap between the Saturn V and the Space Shuttle, and they're trying to make it as reusable as a 747, which is amazing. So anytime they do a test, I want to watch it, Is the Space Shuttle a specific ship? It sounds like a generic name, and I don't know anything about these things. The Space Shuttle is the yeah, Kari, that's a good question. The Space Shuttle is kind of slang for NASA's Space Transportation System, or STS. It was the first reusable spacecraft. You've seen space shuttles before. Here, let me show you. You've seen one of these things before. The shuttle commonly refers to that thing. See that? See the big orange tank? That's how big Starship is. That's how big this thing that we're watching is. That thing is as big as the tank.
Discovery, go at throttle.
That's what, when we say space shuttle, that's what we mean. Sorry, I haven't been around your stream lately. Don't worry about it, Muskrat. I still don't understand why they didn't make an unmanned low Earth orbit shuttle variant to actually treat it like a space truck. I don't know, Ando. I think they put people on it I don't know, maybe the guidance systems weren't there? I'm sure there was a good reason.
Booster 5 supports only Raptor.
Maybe they saw it as more
1.5,
sustainable.
not Raptor 2. So
If you put people on it, it's
that
less
is
likely
just
to
the
get
case
canned.
that Maybe Booster 5 is meant to be as a backup
I mean,
for,
they were right, if that was the
Booster
case, unfortunately.
and it's not necessarily going to be scrapped unless it's
Something like that's
which
short
I
line.
don't know if it's
How many
something
space
yet.
shuttles
We're gonna
messed
have to see how
up?
Booster
Challenger
4
and
does in its test
Columbia.
campaign.
Challenger and Columbia were the two. And it sucks because Challenger screwed up because...
Oh, did the aft flaps just move?
Challenger screwed up because
It definitely just moved
somebody
the
made
aft
an
flaps.
idiot decision based off of how they feel instead of
cool.
following the engineering.
And all flaps.
Look at the flaps.
Good catch.
Challenger was absolutely avoidable. Columbia is just a freak
Interesting
accident.
behavior that I don't think we've
Columbia is an example of doing everything
Yes, sir.
absolutely
Perhaps
right by
this
the
morning.
book and still losing. That's what spaceflight. That's spaceflight, though, man. No one said it was easy. Ares 1 is my favorite Pentaborean. I like Constellation. Constellation was very good architecture. Starship kind of has it beat a little bit, but
waiting for that water
was
deluge to
good.
start
Hey,
up
Demon
now,
Hat.
Any second. Keep your
the
eyes
idea
on
is that the
prize.
demand would come if they had that capability, King. That's something that SpaceX is trying to figure out, too. Columbia was the oldest one. Enterprise is technically the oldest one that's still in one piece. Discover. Oh, wait for it. Okay, audio's cut in. I'm gonna shut up, guys. Hold on. Let's watch.
I think we're coming up on exactly 10 minutes from the siren, if memory serves.
Okay, so we should see the water system turn on at the bottom of the pad here. Down here.
So that can happen.
Sure
And
enough.
the siren is never exactly 10 minutes.
Raise
Nope.
the volume. Okay.
There's Deluge.
Okay.
Here we go.
I'm shutting up.
Perfect.
Abort. That looked like an abort, guys. Did you see that puff that came out of the bottom? It looks like it aborted and they
Sure
immediately
looks
detanked.
like that was an aborted firing.
Yeah.
So no flamey bits. We'll have to wait and see if they recycle or what they do next. But that certainly looked like they were trying to fire up the engines and
Yeah.
instead aborted.
The computers on Starship saw something it didn't
Interesting.
like. Yeah, you don't want to blow that thing up. It looks expensive.
I know we'll get the
How
question,
expensive?
how
If you
long
have to
after
ask,
an
you
abort
can't
can
afford
they go
it.
again? And I don't think I know the answer to that.
Now I'm going back in the footage, and it definitely looks like this.
I mean, King, I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. We've been watching this footage before, and one just popped right on the pad, dude. That's why I always pay attention to these things. SN4, so that's ship number 20. Ship number 4 was sitting there on the pad like this, and then boom, it backfired. Like, it didn't backfire. The whole thing just obliterated itself. Yeah. I don't think they're gonna depress the tanks. They'll probably recycle, guys. Billy Bob's in it. I mean, it's a grain silo, noob. Duh. It's a grain silo, bro. Look at that thing. Freaking grain silo. Yeah, SN4 had a gas leak. Well, not a gas leak. It started leaking propellants all over the pad, and those propellants found a source of ignition and obliterated the pad and the rocket. That was a couple of years ago, though. SN4 was the first Starship to fly. Yeah, it is. They're going to go again. They just tried to, and it looks like the thing laid an egg. It went, and then it did nothing. Now, the engines are the most expensive part, King. There's 6 of them on this thing. SN4 replay? I don't replay RUD videos during live tests. It's bad juju, man. It's bad juju, dude. I don't do that. So, at 2 past the hour, guys, they did have an abort. The engines tried to start, and the sequencer, which is in spaceflight, it's called a sequencer. That's the computers. The computers saw something that they didn't like. Starting up a rocket engine is a complicated process, and even if anything is slightly off kilter, the computer will abort out of an abundance of caution. You don't want to lose your multi-million-dollar vehicle just because you decided to send it. You only decide to send it in rockets when you're ready. And then when you send it, it better be good. You know what I'm talking about? Blackbird, 21-month resub. It looks like they might recycle here. I have a feeling that they will. Chat, do we know how much time is left in the testing window? SpaceX has certain amount of daylight hours during the day for testing. When does this window close? T-Man, it did. A flight readiness firing, an FRF, was the static fire for the shuttles. I remember that short line. 2 hours left. Thank you, Hell Hydra. So 6 local time, so it's 4:07. So they got 52 minutes and 45 seconds left or an hour and 52, excuse me, left in the window. What's all that steam coming out of it? It's not steam. Steam is evaporated water. What you're looking at there, noob, is evaporated liquid oxygen. So it's called gaseous oxygen, or GOX. GOX for short. Gaseous oxygen happens... gaseous oxygen comes out the vents on this thing basically when they're trying to move the liquid oxygen around. So liquid oxygen, or in order for oxygen to exist as a liquid, it has to be really cold. Oxygen on our planet exists as a gas mostly. You're breathing some of it. You're breathing it right now when you inhale. 20% of what you're breathing is oxygen. The rest is just nitrogen. Smells good. So because a spacecraft flies up into space, right? There's no oxygen up there. It's vacuum. There's nothing. So spacecraft have to bring the oxygen with them, right? So they bring it in the form of liquid oxygen. Why liquid? Well, liquid's easier to store than a gas is, that's for sure. And it's easier to move around as a liquid too. And if it's a liquid, that means it's, it means it's colder, right? And if it's colder, that means you can store more of it. So most rockets use liquid oxygen for their oxidizer. There are other oxidizers out there, but liquid oxygen is what you'd use. Now, the thing is like I said, liquid oxygen is really freaking cold. Minus 293 Fahrenheit. Divide that by 1.8 and add 32 if you want to get centigrade. It's cold. Really freaking cold. So, it's so cold that some of the equipment on the rocket, like the pipes, the plumbing, the fuel lines going to the rocket, pipes inside of the rocket, the plumbing that goes to the rocket engines, that all needs to be chilled down. And when you take a liquid and you introduce it into a warm pipe, the liquid is going to try to phase change into gas because it's absorbing heat. When you absorb heat, when stuff absorbs heat, it generally expands. When it expands, it turns to gas. It evaporates. So the gaseous oxygen vents that you see coming out of Starship right there are basically them moving propellant around into different things to thermally condition the stuff for its operating regime. Long story short, don't shoot cold propellant into a hot rocket engine. Parts of the rocket engines are always going to be hot, but you really want to make the rocket engine cold before you start it. Because if you don't, then your liquid oxygen is going to heat up before it goes into the rocket engine, and then your rocket engine is basically going to asphyxiate on itself because it's designed to drink. It's designed to drink and not breathe. Rocket engines are liquid fuel engines, at least on this one, so they need to drink. That would be like you trying to drink and breathe at the same time. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the rocket engine either. So they need to thermally condition down the engines. Yeah. That's a big vent. They're moving a lot of liquid oxygen around. That's all gaseous oxygen. Now, that's different. Fun fact, the room for the SpaceX official streams is they're banned on red shirts during launches. You'll be asked to change if you wear one. That's a good idea. That's a good call, Laserman. Now, see the ring of frost that's on there? That's from the part of the liquid oxygen being stored in certain areas. The frost is occurring on the ring because the ship is getting so cold because it has those propellants in it. It's actually vaporizing the humidity in the atmosphere around it, and that causes condensation. It's the same kind of thing if you get take a cold snack out of the fridge, right? And you open it up and it starts sweating. Same exact thing. Only with rockets and much colder. So yeah, each one of these vents, there's a bunch of them there. Each one of those vents are to different components, like rocket engines, fuel lines, etc., etc. The more you see it venting, the more it's trying to chill down something. That meaning they're moving the liquid oxygen around, and it's exchanging heat with something and turning into gas and going out the vent lines. It's like I said, it's very important to get the entire rocket cold before you shoot cold propellant through it because, yeah, the rocket engines will asphyxiate. That definitely happens. Rocket engines it's a liquid fuel rocket engine, and it's called that for a reason. It's not a gas-fueled rocket engine. That doesn't end... I mean, those exist, but... Yeah, if you have a liquid fuel engine, you put gas in your liquid fuel engine. It's like if you have a gasoline engine and you put diesel in it. Doesn't work right. So they have to make sure that everything is chilled down, and that's what they're doing with these vent lines. That's a good indicator that they're going to recycle, that they're gonna try again here. Has there been any update after the shuttle engines that fired up a few months back? I haven't heard anything. Stroker, you're referring to the B channel engine controller on the number 4 engine on the SLS core? Yeah, they're gonna swap the engine controller out of an abundance of caution. I want to be very clear that it's the B channel controller on the engine ECU. They call them EMSs though. They're engine management systems on the shuttle engines. So the shuttle, or an avionics controller. The shuttle's avionics controller is 2 fault redundant, so it has 2 channels on it, channel A and B. The B channel on the controller malfunctioned. It went dead. But the motor was still working. They could have fired it on the A channel, but why would you do that when you have time to swap it, right? So they're going to swap out the engine management system. If you're a pilot, it's basically the FADEC for the engine. If you fly, you know what that means. But you could call it ECU, you could call it avionics, you call it engine management system, you call it whatever you want. The computers that govern how the rocket engine performs. One of the channels on one of the computers on one of the engines on SLS malfunctioned. And NASA saw fit to replace it, and then what they have to do now is go figure out what went wrong with that engine controller. There's another static fire Wefrel. They attempted to fire at two past the hour, and they aborted. We're waiting to see if they go again. Now, what they're gonna do here, right here, is the condenser. You see this little smokestack right there? It's a little guy. It's hard to see. Right here is their condenser system. The recondenser system. It's right there. If the recondenser system turns back on, well, the condenser system, just like these vents here, that vent right there is indicative that they're moving fuel through the fuel lines that go through this dirt pile, underneath the dirt pile, up into the ship. That confirms that they're moving fuel into the vehicle again. Now, the thing about using liquid oxygen and liquid methane like this thing here, the thing about that is that liquid methane at extremely high pressure, at extremely low temperature, it boils. Same with liquid oxygen. It's the same thing like if you, at ambient pressure, you take a pot of water and you put it on the stove and you move it to 100 C, it's going to start boiling. These things are at, the propellants inside of here are extremely cold and at extremely high pressure. They're going to boil. So that's the other thing that those vents do. Those vents mitigate the boil off, because if you have a pot of water and you boil it, what's going to happen? It's gonna all evaporate, turn to gas, and then you're gonna have an empty pot. Same thing with the rocket propellants. They will boil off over time. So because they had an aborted attempt, right, they need to vent out the tanks, and they need to get the gaseous oxygen and the gaseous methane out of the tanks and replace it with liquid oxygen. The propellants basically have a shelf life for the most part, unless you can keep them cold at really high pressure, but that gets a little bit difficult. Physics starts to do weird things when you try to push something like that, i.e. But if we see the condenser turn back on, that means they're reconditioning the fuel lines to put more fuel in it. They will most likely have to top off, if I'm understanding this correctly. However, they might not have to. They might not have to. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. If there was enough fuel in there to do another static fire, they might not have to top it off. So I'm not 100% sure. We'll wait and see. Why doesn't Elon just put a ton of his flamethrowers on the ships? I bet that will get him to space. Because they're roofing torches. But what that roofing torch does, King, and what a rocket engine does is not that far off. If you put an hourglass on the end of a flamethrower, right? So basically put a funnel and then another funnel on the other side. It's basically a rocket engine. The thing is getting the proportions of the funnel correctly. You need to be able to compress gas inside of the combustion chamber. Well, you need to be able to combust it. And basically you need to have a chamber pressure that's going to be able to accelerate the gases, the hot gases that come out of the rocket, the flamethrower, right? At supersonic speeds through the throat, so they can come out with some force. That's basic propulsion rocket engineering. You need to make sure you achieve what's called a high enough chamber pressure to support a high enough mass flow rate, so you can get the exit velocity of the gases high enough to where they produce thrust. Basically, where they accelerate out enough to make you go up. Yeah, it's tough. But what a flamethrower does and what a rocket engine does is not that far off. The rocket engine just shoots the gases that come out into a funnel and accelerates it out. A flamethrower just... But rockets are basically an explosion factory. That's what they are. They're an explosion factory that takes an explosion and just diverts it in one direction. That's it. So like a bomb going off, right? And what a bomb, when it goes off in all directions. A rocket engine is just a bomb inside of a funnel that shoots out the bottom. It accelerates gases out the bottom at supersonic speeds in the throat, and then they go subsonic when they hit the nozzle. But it's enough to shoot it out so you could push yourself up. This was figured out by a gentleman by the name of Robert Goddard. Robert Goddard was an American from Massachusetts, from my state, that figured this out. That if you basically take a flamethrower and you put a nozzle on the end of it, you can create thrust. He figured that out in 1922, before the jet engine even existed, which is crazy. It's an assembly line of boom. That's right, Invoker. It's an explosion factory. I always say, for the people that don't know me, I always say a rocket mission is going well if an explosion is happening. But you want your explosion to go in one direction. If the explosion is going in multiple directions, something has gone very wrong. So something went very wrong. I don't like to reduce this to its base element, but that's basically it. But for the people that don't know, I'm not just saying like, oh, right, the Flamians got to point down. Not that that's a bad way to say it. That's right. That's correct. But I know the reasons why you want the explosion to go in one direction. You need to be able to achieve a mass flow rate so your gases can get beyond supersonic, move into the transonic regime in the throat of the nozzle. A higher mass flow rate, it supports a higher exit velocity on the gases. A higher exit velocity on the gases means you go up. I know the physics behind it too. So, like, I'm not just saying, like, God, that rocket's gotta go down because that's good. You can tell it's gotta go down because of the way it is. You mean to say that the Chinese created the rocket? Solid rocket W, the first liquid fuel rocket engine that was invented by an American. But solid rockets are a Chinese invention because of fireworks and stuff, and early medieval Chinese siege weaponry, if I'm remembering right. Why don't they use a flare to burn the gas anymore? That's what the recondenser is for, Malachi. They have a solar-powered methane recondenser that basically uses liquid nitrogen to cool down the gaseous methane that's coming that happens from boil off on Starship. It meets some liquid nitrogen in the recondenser, and the methane, the gaseous methane, hits that cold liquid nitrogen in some kind of heat exchanger, and it becomes liquid again, and they put that back into the fuel tanks. It's a scavenging system. Like, basically think a much bigger air conditioner. And it's not an air conditioner, it's a methane conditioner. Or recondenser. Jungo, what's going on? Yeah, they got rid of the purge flame, Malachi. The purge flame is another way to... Purge flames like that, with methane or with crude oil or something, are designed to create pressure in the pipes and designed to basically move whatever commodity where you need it to go. The purge flame was basically designed to get the methane to go away from the vehicle. And also, you want to burn off gaseous methane. Gaseous methane is a greenhouse gas. Not good for the environment. Don't get me wrong, they still do vent a little bit, but you don't want to vent a lot of that stuff. It's not good. Cows. Would you consider the thrust to be produced at the end of the nozzle or at the top of the combustion chamber? Well, the thrust is actually in the nozzle, Invoker. It's in the nozzle, yeah. The nozzle is where it happens. Mm-hmm. Isn't a purge flame used for hydrogen? That's correct, Finn. Yep. Do you think Starship will be in orbit before 2023? It's going to be a tall order, Chungo, I'll tell you that. It's going to be a tall order. Something like that, Trog. Anyway, I've been talking for a little while.
I'm gonna go through some more questions.
I'm gonna let the NSF guys talk for a
If you
second.
see that deluge turn on, you just interrupt me right away and let me know in case I miss it.
Pressure. Yeah, go for it.
You gotta be optimistic, Chungo. Spaceflight is so
Martin asks,
ridiculously
"Do we know that
difficult that
Rocket
being
Q does
cynical
not
won't
have a
get you
common mouth
anywhere.
with
You
Rocket
have to be inherently
Q? As
optimistic.
far as I
Think
know,
about what
it's
they're
a
trying to
different
do
mouth.
here. You think being negative about trying to get something like that to work is a good idea? I don't think
that's
that's a good idea at all.
Raptor 1.
Right?
Could they adapt them? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe,
Am I
Endo.
even
Who
correct?
knows?
Also not sure, but that's my understanding.
Web news. The DTA, the Deployable Tower Assembly on James Webb, has deployed. Perfect. Another big step for James Webb.
Trevor's asking what your favorite kind of horse is, Chris. One word, or one name. What's your favorite type of horse?
Frisian. Yeah, they're intelligent, huge horses.
I said one word. I said
Sorry.
one word.
Clydesdale.
Frisians.
Oh, that was amusing.
Why is rocket
What
fuel
word? You
often
asked me
super
about
cold
horse,
liquid?
cold word.
Dude, great question. All right, Spoon, give me a second to catch my breath. The abrasion on the palm of your right hand indicates that Tyke wants to say fall from 3 to 5 feet. The piece of plaster on your shoe, a careless Mason being the culprit. Wait, no, sorry, that's something different. So why is rocket engine fuel super cold? Keep in mind, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can be room temperature. Falcon 9, for instance, SpaceX's other rocket uses RP-1 for its liquid fuel. RP-1 is a highly refined version of kerosene. It's kind of brothers with kerosene or diesel fuel or jet fuel. That's not cold. Doesn't need to be cold. No vent, no nothing. Oxidizer, like liquid oxygen, which will fly with a methane-style rocket like this one. This is liquid methane and liquid oxygen. Falcon 9 is RP-1 and liquid oxygen. And then stuff like the space shuttle was liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Or SLS is liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen coupled with solid rocket boosters. But the reason why they're cold is two reasons. So one, you need to jam a lot of potential energy into a rocket, okay? Energy. Nice. You need to jam a lot of potential energy into a rocket. Why? Well, rockets need to be able to accelerate to 17,500 miles an hour. They need to go very, very fast. Way faster than any jet plane, like way faster. That's just to get into low Earth orbit. You want to go to the moon? 25,000 miles an hour all day. You need to be able to accelerate to that speed. So you need to carry a lot of potential energy in the form of liquid fuel and liquid oxygen to shoot out the bottom to be able to accelerate to that speed. Now, if you know a little bit about basic physics, you know that stuff when it's cold, when stuff cools down, it contracts. When stuff heats up, it expands, right? That's why if you heat water, for instance, on the stove, it'll turn to steam, and it'll boil and it'll turn to steam. Liquid to gas, right? Simultaneously, if you take water and you lower the temperature enough, it's going to turn into a solid. It's going to freeze, right? Now, when stuff freezes, it's really contracted. Well, ice actually expands, so it's not the best example, but you get the idea. Long story short, the propellants need to be in liquid form. In order for liquid oxygen and liquid methane or liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen to exist as liquids, they need to be cold. Because hydrogen, oxygen, and methane in our atmosphere exist as gases. Those are gases. Down here, you're breathing oxygen right now. If you just farted, you're breathing methane too. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, kind of is, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so now you can make solid oxygen if you want, but solid oxygen would be really hard to do. You'd need a lot of that would be tough. That would be tough to make solid oxygen. And even if you did make solid oxygen, how are you going to get it? How are you going to get it to the rocket engine? It's a solid. What are you going to do? Heat it up first? That's probably not a good idea. SpaceX had some problems with solid oxygen a little while ago and found a really good way to make their rocket blow up in all directions instead of just one. Yeah, don't do that. That didn't end well. So you're storing them as a liquid is the best way to do it. And if you're going to store oxygen as a liquid, A, if it's a liquid, you can get more of it in there. And B, if it's a liquid, it has to be cold because oxygen only exists as a liquid at really, 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 really low temperatures. How do you know? Yes. Wait. Yeah, so SpaceX had a rocket blow up on the pad a little while back. This was back in 2016, and the reason that happened is because they froze their liquid oxygen too much. You want to try to freeze it to get as much as you can in there, but you don't want to freeze it and have it turn to ice. Their liquid oxygen, they use densified liquid oxygen, so they try to lower it to basically a slushy, right? So about as close as you can get to solid without being solid, so you can get more oxygen in your rocket so your rocket can go further. If you can get more oxygen in there, you can get more fuel in there. If you can get more fuel and oxygen in there, you can create more you have more potential energy. Your rocket can accelerate more. So if it can accelerate to a higher speed, right, your rocket can move more into space. It's a more capable vehicle, right? So they had a problem where they went a little too overboard with it, and just like ice on a road becoming a solid, which cracks the road if you live in the salt belt, or if you live in the Northeast, part of the U.S. like me, or you live anywhere where it's cold, you know that snow is terrible for a road because it melts and then it freezes again and it turns to ice and it cracks the road. SpaceX basically had that happen with solid oxygen inside of their rocket. Yeah, it didn't end well. The tanks are under pressure, and if they crack like a road, well, it was a nice party trick, you know. So you don't want that, and they don't want that here either. Wait, if you say that a fart is methane, does that mean that Starship could fly on our farts? I don't think a fart is totally methane, Space Button, but I mean, it could. I don't think your farts are just methane. They're a bunch of stuff. So the frost that's happening on the sides of the vehicle here are from decompressing the tanks. Anybody ever played paintball before? Ever have a paintball gun? What happens if you fire it fast? The tank freezes, right? Because it decompressed. Low pressure, cold. Same kind of thing going on here. They decompressed the tanks from the aborted test, and frost accumulated on the outside of the vehicle. That's normal. So you're saying there's a chance? Indeed. We haven't seen the recondenser turn on yet. The recondenser in this shot is over. Oh, and I literally just finished saying that, and it turned on. See the smoke from behind the water tanks right there? Hang on. See right there? Yep. The recondenser's on. Once again, if the recondenser is on, that means they're starting to move fuel through the fuel lines here to top the vehicle off. Because we know they depressed the tanks because the propellant's boiled off from the frost right there. Nice, Rogue. There we go. Damn, Sebi. It's been on and off for a minute or two. Gotcha, Mappy. They could be priming it, getting ready to go. But it looks like they're turning that recondenser back on. If this thing starts smoking like a chimney, we're probably going to see another test here. Hook up collection hoses to cattle to collect methane and beef. I'm sure someone's thought of that at some point. By the time this thing is able to get to orbit, it'll be a shuttle. You say that like it's a bad thing, dude. It'll be shuttle 1.1, man. You don't want that? I'm expecting it is this 1.1 when it launches, Excessum. If it doesn't, I'm going to be very upset. Yep, Spoonwood. Yep, K-Mir's correct. I'm thinking shuttle 2.0. No. 1.1. Shiny rocket, good. Orange rocket, good. Indeed. I want the shuttle back, just like CRT, TVs, and VHS. All those things still exist. But I know what you mean. Hey, Ma, what's going on? Hear me out. Zero-G space veal, so tender and soft, it's like meat jello. I mean, domesticating livestock in space sounds like a really, really difficult thing to do. That's not an easy thing to do down here. Well, for farmers, it's probably pretty easy. I mean, how long would it actually take to get the shuttle back operational? A couple of years? A decade, T-Man, at least. You're basically starting from scratch. I would not... If we just said, let's get the shuttle flying again right now, I would not use Discovery, Atlantis, or Endeavor. I would build new shuttles. And if we're going to build new shuttles, If we're going to build the new shuttles, we might as well fix all the problems that NASA had with them before. And if we're going to do that, start propulsion testing, start getting those RS-25s up to snuff. And if we're going to do that, start getting that tile problem figured out with the shuttle. If we're going to do that, I would basically start from scratch. But, yeah, 10 years. 10 years and probably like $20 billion would probably do it. That'd probably be $20 billion over 10 years, so $2 billion a year. They'll probably get it to work. The shuttle's just as complicated, if not more, than that thing. It's going to take a while for this thing to get working correctly. No, it'd take about a decade, Trog. Yeah, about a decade. We could use... Just because we're starting from scratch doesn't mean we can't use the knowledge that was had from the original shuttle program. All the integration equipment's already invented. It just needs to be made again. It's possible. It would take a long time, but it's possible. Starship and Super Heavy piggyback on SLS. Ugh, stop that. You stop this now. By that time, you might as well save the money and throw it at Starship. Yep. 20 billion sounds like a lot before you peek at the U.S. defense budget. And Trog, that just feeds into a larger point that I talk about on the stream all the time. Spaceflight isn't as expensive as we think it is. It really isn't. Compared to some other expenditures for Uncle Sam, it is not expensive. NASA doesn't need the military's budget. Hell no. That would be bad. That would be very bad. That would create a ton of waste, and not a lot would get done. Because spaceflight isn't that expensive. It's like if you went grocery shopping with like $1,000. You're gonna buy $1,000 worth of groceries? I mean, that'd be kind of cool. But I'm not sure what you'd do with that. You don't need that much money unless you're a fat piece of crap like me and eat too much food. You know, you don't need that much money. If NASA had their budget doubled, that's perfect. That would be good enough. If NASA's budget was doubled, they could have kept flying the space shuttle, started building SLS, and hire SpaceX to move people to the space station all at the same time, and probably have like $10 billion left over for science missions. So, like, instead of 1 James Webb, 2 James Webbs, 3 James Webbs. Yeah, we could do a bunch of those. Yeah, easily. Oh, easily. Something like that, Sebi, yep. Gets cheaper the more you make. Economies of scale, Meef, with that being said, is the way to beat that economic problem. Spaceflight is still expensive for the average person right now. It's nowhere near airplanes. Why? Well, it's not near airplanes because, well, there's a lot more airplanes out there than there are spacecraft, right? So, economies of scale is the only way to beat it. And you know what? It doesn't even need to be reusable. If NASA decided they want 30 SLS launches in a year, the price of SLS would come down 30-fold almost. Maybe not 30-fold, 20-fold for 30 SLSs. It would come down a lot because building the factory is expensive. Manufacturing the rocket is the easy part, remember? Building the factory that builds the rocket and all the equipment that you need to get that done correctly, that's the expensive part. Economies of scale is the way to get around it, Meef. I'm with you 100% on that one. Building the tools and the launch pads and all the integration hangars, well, that adds up. And that's why SLS is expensive, because it's a new style of rocket. Even though it's using shuttle parts, we needed to figure out how to put that stupid thing together. You know, like we needed to figure out the factory to put this thing together, the factory to upgrade the engines. There was a lot of stuff that went into this. That's why it's so dang expensive, because you're getting the entire price. NASA has to tell us the price. That's why SLS seems like it's so expensive. I guarantee you, if they get SLS running healthy, $400 million a pop, easily. Right now, because it's still in development and testing, right? And Artemis 1 is technically a prototype, right? The cost is high, but that's cost. So wait, you're telling me that prototyping stuff is expensive? Huh. Shocking revelation, right? Like, see what I'm talking about? Like, is it lack of demand that spaceflight is so far behind commercial travel? Yeah, Felister, but people didn't think they needed a jet airliner to travel across the United States before World War II, or even into the 50s. Even into the 50s, flying around on a plane was a rich people thing. It's only until the 60s came along with Boeing with the 707, and a little bit before that, de Havilland with the Comet, Boeing with the 707, Douglas with the DC-8, and Convair with the Convair 880. That's when this passenger service kind of came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? You have to flood the market, and then demand came from flooding the market with vehicles. The automobile is the same thing. Henry Ford flooded the market with Model Ts and created the car market out of nothing. And everybody said, hey, I can build a better car than you. And he said, hey, no, you can't. And boom, there you go. There's your auto industry. It happens. You got to keep going. So, people say like, oh, there's no demand for launching rockets. Well, there was no demand for an automobile in 1903. But by 1920, there was. It takes some time, but if you're able to flood the market and mass produce stuff, you'll eventually you'll make a whole new economy out of nothing. Guys, why do you think I always say more rockets is better? What do you think? What do you think? I mean, one, I'm greedy. I like all rockets. Anybody that's crazy enough to throw their hat into this ring deserves some pretty good respect. Second of all, more rockets is the way to more sustainability. We'll eventually get to a threshold where that's an economic pillar, and it's not recession proof, but nothing is recession proof. But it'll get to the point where like the auto industry had a nasty recession, and they're still around. You know what I mean? Through other means, but you get what I'm trying to say. We have to basically cement it as a pillar of economic stability, like the automobile, like the airplane, like the train,
Discovery, go at throttle.
or the container ship, or whatever. And that's just all you got to do is just keep doing it until you pass a threshold. Where that threshold is and what it entails, I don't know. I can't predict the future. Metric 49-month resub. See, SpaceX's idea, Sebi, exactly. SpaceX's idea is to create the demand for the rockets by having them maintain an internet satellite constellation, Starlink. That's part of the reason. Starlink is partially subsidizing the development of Starship. And then Starship will be able to maintain the Starlink network. If a satellite breaks, it'll deorbit itself because it's in a decaying orbit naturally. Or if a satellite hits end of life, it hits EOL, it'll deorbit and it'll burn up in the atmosphere. And then they need a reusable ship employed in mass numbers would be really good at maintaining a network of 30,000 satellites, don't you think? SpaceX is trying to make their demand, and they're using global telecommunications to do it, which is actually pretty dang smart. They're trying to stabilize the demand for launching rockets, and that can bring the price down. But the thing is, you got to spend money to make money. In order to get that kind of stuff done, you need to be a freaking billionaire. But Elon, I'm pretty sure he has money to throw at this problem, don't you think? Him and Jeff Bezos, for what it's worth. And they are. Blue Origin's doing stuff in the background, man. I would look out for them too, Hey, Smoked, what's going on? What type of glue did they use for the shuttle? I don't know off the top of my head, T-Man. The CRS missions help fund SpaceX as well. Absolutely, Jen. Why would you shut yourself off to other revenue streams? It's not just Starlink. It's Starlink. It's commercial contracts. It's NASA missions. It's outside investment. All of that, all of that is contributing to that thing's development. So how can we help? Sign up for Starlink Internet? Well, I mean, yeah, if you want. Yeah, if you want. I mean, Starlink, if you buy into Starlink, one, you get pretty decent internet. Two, that Starlink is basically directly supporting this. Yeah, Smoke, they're going to go again. It would be cool to have RS-68s on SLS. Don't get me started, T-Man. Smoke wow and smoke the blue. There's too many smokes in here. We get it. You smoke. You vape. You drink Monster Energy too? I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's Project Kuiper, Maverick. Blue Origin is, as always, very, very quiet about that. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Nice, C22. That's cool. I prefer Power Thirst! Menergy! This is live. Yeah, this is live right now. I'm not sure if they're going to recycle, guys. We're getting a little bit late in the window. We have about an hour 15 left. Since the last Elon interview, I don't smoke anymore. I am a man. So you drink White Claw. Got it. Real men drink White Claw. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pop back over to NSF. But fellas, if you wanna keep watching this stream, I'll keep it up. Right? We'll go back to Hearts of Iron. We are currently invading Romania. No? So Jet's Pizza is good. Jet's Pizza is probably about as good as you can get for store-bought pizza. Yeah. It's, at the top of the list. Interesting, Sebi. Taking over the land of your ancestors. Yeah, so I'm gonna... Oh, wait, what's it doing? It seems like they primed the recondenser and it seems like it shut off. Sorry, I'm just watching. I'll be honest with you, I'm deathly afraid of switching back to Hearts of Iron. Because I know the second I talk myself into switching back to Hearts of Iron, the recondenser is going to turn on. I know that's going to happen. How's the invasion of Romania? It's going alright, but we got to be careful. Aren't you worried so many launches that would mean what so many launches would mean for climate change? Yeah, of course, Malachi. Duh. Why wouldn't I be? But you got to remember, you driving around in your car will affect the climate with really no good net positive result. Think about this for a second, all right? Just consider it, all right? The rockets do pollute. Abso-freaking-lutely. Of course they do. You don't expend that much energy and not pollute something, okay? Of course they do. Even the rockets that have emissions that are just water, like a Hydrolox rocket, like the Space Shuttle main engine, its exhaust is just water vapor. But even then, how much carbon did you burn to freaking make that hydrogen propellant? Now, with that being said, dude, if I want more rockets, if we send more rockets up, yeah, it will pollute in the short term. But if we figure out how to colonize space and we can get people off planet, that can save Earth in the long term. If we spread out among the stars, that means we don't eventually need to be forced into an overpopulation scenario and ruin this planet. Or just, maybe we don't need to keep ruining it right now. Earth is a very unique planet in the solar system, and we're quickly finding out that it's a pretty unique planet, period. Launching rockets will pollute in the short term, but the positive outweighs the negative tenfold. Satellites help monitor the climate. Bingo, Yeu. You got it, buddy. Absolutely. But that would take hundreds of years. Josh, I've never, ever, ever, ever said that we couldn't work on fixing the climate right now and also launch things into space. Anybody that tries to phrase it as one or the other, that's stupid. It's not mutually exclusive. You can be cognizant of the environment and still have a lot of carbon emissions by launching stuff into space. I don't think that's it's one or the other. No. You know, like, that's... It's good to be cognizant of not screwing up your environment. We have to achieve symbiosis with this planet or we'll ruin it. Like, that's not... I really think that's open for judgment. If we pollute it too much, you could send it into a cataclysmic spiral that would... I mean, don't get me wrong, it probably wouldn't kill us. But, I mean, it probably would be not preferable. Probably would be fine. Like, we'd be okay. Earth would be okay. It's not like it's going to break if we pollute it too much. Earth would be just fine. Earth, frankly, doesn't give a frick if we're here or not. But, you know, it would be foreign to us. And I think that's that whole argument, you know. You could cause irreversible damage. You know? So I upgraded my monitor to 4K over Christmas, and well, the results speak for themselves. Let me see. Whoa. That is a very nice picture. Wow. That's awesome, Alex. Very good. Yeah, rockets, guys, rockets don't pollute that much, even if we launch them in mass. But even if it did be, it's never going to be like cars or container ships. Cars or container ships are what, in terms of carbon emissions, are what pollute the most, if that's what you're worried about, right? Those make the most. Rockets will, and airplanes too, they'll never get to that point. Unless we're launching hundreds of rockets off of planet every day, we're never getting to that point. I don't think we'd ever, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe, you know, like Josh said, maybe in a couple hundred years, who knows? But you got to remember, you have to expend some energy, you have to pollute if you're going to launch a rocket into space, and space could potentially hold keys to understanding ways to achieve symbiosis with our environment here. Think about it. Launching people into space is all about sustainability. Why? There's no water in space. I mean, there is, but like at the space station, for instance, you have to reuse as much water as you possibly can. The astronauts don't even take showers because it's a waste of water. They take a wet rag and wipe themselves down with it, you know, in the head on the space station. You have to achieve sustainability with your environment, and you have to be as sustainable as possible to live in space. Learning how to do that can really help us down here. That will really help us. I always said, if we can make a sustainable colony on the moon, that will give us technologies back here on Earth to achieve more sustainability with our planet and basically not screw it up as much. I mean, it's pretty straightforward stuff. I used to do that when I was homeless. Well, you ain't homeless no more, are you? See? You thought like NASA, and now you're not homeless. That's how that works, right? It's not how that works at all, but you get the idea. Yeah, Angry. Well, once again, it's not like we can't work on being better to the environment and, you know, monitor it. Like, people always say, like, we got to monitor it more. No, we got to pollute less. We can do all of these things, right? We can launch stuff into space. You could keep using your dang car. NASA can monitor the atmosphere, and we can also launch rockets into space, and we could do all those things at once, and all those things would, except for the car, would be helping. It's not like we have to focus on one thing or focus on another. We could do all those things. You know? We got to do the other things. Less cars, more rockets. Is that a good compromise? Can we have less gasoline cars and more rockets? I'll take the electric car. That's fine. That's right, Phil. I mean, if I could have electric car goes fast, yeah, that's fine. That's all right. That's cool. I just want to go fast. Precisely my point. We should be able to do all those things. We are doing all those things, guys. Have a little bit of faith. Gotta have a little bit of faith. Oh, big tank depress. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that that's another static. Woo! Another static fire ain't happening tonight. Rocket car? I mean, you asking or are you telling, C22? Not from the grid, though. Hey, solar. Solar's fine. There's nothing wrong with solar power, Emmy. There's nothing wrong with wind power. They generate plenty of power. problem is they only generate power at certain times. Solar panels don't do anything at night. I know, hard concept for some to grasp. It's storing the power, storing the electricity. Storing electricity is a pain in the butt. Power plants don't even do that. Power plants, if you think of how a power plant works, think of it like a bucket with a bunch of holes at the bottom, right? Even if you plug some of the holes, you're still going to be leaking. So what is their solution? Just pour more water into the bucket, because we can't plug the holes. You can't do that. You can't cut off power. Power plants just basically generate power, and there's always excess. There's always aggregate amounts of power, lots of energy that just gets wasted, because the power plant has to be able to anticipate demand. That's very important to understand. So power plants basically are peg the thing at 11 and just go. That's super inefficient. If we found ways to store power plants, we wouldn't need as much power plants. Everybody just have solar panels and batteries. The problem is being able to store electricity in a battery that has the same energy density as a fossil fuel. Once we figure that stuff out, you don't need a car. You could put a battery the size of your gas tank in the car and get the same range. We're getting there. Have some faith. We're getting there. And like I said, Mr. Whiteclaw right here is the guy that's actually working on that. Tesla's new 4670 battery cells have comparable energy density to gasoline, which is pretty insane. That's a big deal. Tesla talked about them and they released them for Battery Day last year, I think. It's really hardcore stuff. We're working on it. And yeah, if that guy cracks that, man, trillionaire all day. 4680, sorry, not 4670. Excuse me. But you get the idea. Those 4670 solid state or 4680 solid state batteries, that's a big deal. That means you could have a battery in your car the size of a gas tank and it would go the same distance. Which means if you put a bigger battery into your car, you have the potential here to go further than a gasoline car. See what I'm talking about? That's what we got to crack. But we're working on it. Have a little bit of faith. We're getting there. We're getting there. There are people working on this. This guy, Mr. Whiteclaw. I don't think is it solid? It's tabless? Which one of them is solid? I forget all the numbers and letters, guys. It's too much information off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, look. There were more road closures. Tabless. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, solid state isn't right. They were working on a solid state, I thought, too. But I could be misremembering. You're probably right. It would be much heavier, though, right? Not necessarily, Black. No, not necessarily. Once again, we'd have to find the right metal alloy to be able to store the electricity. So, batteries basically absorb electrical energy, kind of like a sponge absorbs water. And different types of sponges could absorb more water depending on what you make it out of, right? Same thing. Electricity kind of works like that. It's a little bit more complicated, but that's kind of the idea. Dude, we could get there. The reason why we haven't gotten there isn't some crazy physics law. It's just because we haven't tried because gasoline engines work good enough. Yeah, I think it was Toyota Kirinov. That's what other people were saying in chat. I'll default to chat's judgment in that regard because I'm not sure. Yeah, that's right. Adri. Electric engines are way more efficient than a gasoline engine. We also need to know where to take the metals to do battery. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take some time, Kigek, for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked and a lot more questions that need to be answered too. Because there's already currently a lot of questions. We got to ask more questions. We got to find more answers. But we're working on it. We'll get there. I ain't worried. You worried? I ain't worried. Yeah, but the internal combustion engine sounds way better. I'm not going to argue with that. Funny story, I worked at a solar power company. We had automatic alerts set up to let us know if a solar installation broke. One of those was power production at night. It alerted once we couldn't figure out what broke. Turns out that the panels were generating power off of the lights from the baseball stadium next door. Cool.
Can I get your help to cut this bumpy cake into 9 pieces? No. Okay.
Yeah. She can cut the cake. It's fine. Yeah, go help her with the cake. All right.
It's hard to keep track of everything.
All right, I'll
When
put
you
on
keep track
NSF
of
for a
everything.
second. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
I really appreciate everyone on the internet here that helps keep track of everything. Because by Dolly, I sure can't. I just take the pictures. So.
You are the photon collector.
Ah, that's gonna be a good movie one day.
We gotta be careful. We gotta make sure our troops are supplied. They're still having trouble getting up there. We should be able to push through here. I shortened the front because this front was on the Hungarian border, and I shortened it. So now these divisions are going to move in, and they're going to try to go through here. Let's see. We still have them outnumbered on planes, and they're definitely